Left the phone face down this time, not on purpose, just ended up that way. The table was already crowded, keys, that old receipt that never gets thrown out, mug ring drying into the wood. The room was warm in that dull way heat gets when it's been on too long. Nothing dramatic, just Tuesday air. Some men get red fast, almost instantly. It's like a light turns on in their chest and everything inside is already arranged. The mood, the intention, the want. Clean, accessible, easy to point at. Others don't. And it's not because they're clever or hiding something sharp. It's more like there's no clear handle. The surface stays calm even when there should be noise. Or there is noise, but it never lines up with what's expected. A laugh that comes late. A pause that doesn't apologize. That pause does something. Not loudly. It doesn't announce itself. It just hangs there, like the second after a door doesn't slam when it was supposed to. People lean in without realizing they moved. There's this belief that attraction comes from showing more, sharing, opening, explaining, laying everything flat so it can be understood, approved, maybe returned. That belief works fine for schedules and emails and buying furniture. It breaks down elsewhere, especially when the thing on the other side isn't looking for clarity. Just stimulation, movement, a reason to keep checking. Hard-to-read men don't feed the pattern. They don't rush to smooth the silence. They don't fill gaps just to prove they're safe. Sometimes they're safe, sometimes not. The point is, nobody knows yet, and that not knowing costs attention. The mind hates unfinished things, leaves them open, comes back later, runs little loops while brushing teeth, while waiting for coffee, while pretending to listen to a story already heard twice. There's an old elevator in one building downtown that takes a full 10 seconds longer than it should. No music, just the hum. People stare at the numbers every time, even locals, even after years. Uncertainty does that. Predictable men close loops too early. They answer before the question forms. They offer reassurance before doubt exists. They explain intentions like a disclaimer at the bottom of a screen no one asked to read. It feels kind, thoughtful, mature. It also ends the chase before it begins. Not the dramatic chase, not games, not running away, just the quiet internal one. The one where someone replays a moment to see if something was missed. A tone, a look, that half-second delay before a reply. Hard-to-read men don't give enough data for that loop to shut down, so the loop stays alive. There's a biological layer to this that never gets announced. No one sits down and decides it. The nervous system just reacts. Incomplete information spikes alertness, attention sharpens, energy gets allocated. Back when survival mattered in simpler ways, the unreadable presence in the environment wasn't ignored, it was watched, carefully, because it might matter later. That wiring didn't disappear, it just got rerouted into conversations, glances, text bubbles that show typing, then stop. No. Wait. That stop matters more than the words that follow. Men who are hard to read usually aren't trying to be. That's the boring truth. They're occupied, with work, with something internal, with not needing immediate validation to regulate how they feel in their body. There's a steadiness there that doesn't perform. It's subtle, almost disappointing at first. No big emotional spikes, no dramatic reactions, no obvious hunger for approval. Just a baseline, consistent, quiet, sometimes inconvenient, like missing a call and not scrambling to explain why. That gets misread, often. Early on it looks like disinterest, or arrogance, or emotional unavailability. The mind tries labels, none of them quite stick, so it keeps checking. Maybe he didn't notice. Maybe he did. Maybe that look meant something else. Maybe nothing. That maybe becomes magnetic. Here's the uncomfortable part, the part that doesn't sound flattering. When someone can't be read, the other person fills in the blanks with themselves. Their hopes, their fears, their past patterns. The attraction feels intense, personal, almost fated. But a lot of it is projection doing unpaid labor. Hard-to-read men become screens. And whatever gets projected onto them feels real, even if it isn't. That's not manipulation. It's a side effect of emotional containment, of not leaking every internal movement outward, of not broadcasting reassurance on demand. Containment signals strength at a level below words. It says, there's enough here. No rush, no collapse, no chase. That steadiness creates asymmetry, and asymmetry creates tension. There's a moment that happens in a lot of early interactions. It's small, easy to miss. A question gets asked that invites disclosure, something light, weekend plans, past relationships, a failure that's safe to admit. The predictable response would be to open the door, give context, offer detail. The hard-to-read response is shorter, not evasive, just sufficient. It answers the question without feeding the narrative engine. Oh, just kept busy, that's it. The mind on the other side stalls for half a second. It wanted more, not because it deserves more, just because that's how stories work. The pause lands, a little pressure builds, not anxiety, interest that has nowhere to go yet, so it waits. There's a kind of emotional economy at play. Whoever invests more first loses leverage, not power, leverage. They become easier to predict, easier to settle around. Hard to read men delay that investment, not strategically, just because they don't feel the need to offload themselves to be accepted. That restraint reads as value, even when it shouldn't, especially then. There's a risk here, and it deserves saying out loud, even if it ruins the mood. Some men confuse being unreadable with being absent, cold, detached. That's not the same thing. Absence doesn't create tension, it creates decay. Unreadable still shows up, listens, responds, just doesn't over-explain or overreact. There's presence without performance. That's rare, and rarity triggers focus. One afternoon, nothing special, someone mentioned a man like this and said, "I just can't tell what he's thinking." It was said with frustration and heat and curiosity tangled together. That sentence was the attraction, not the man, the not knowing. The mind wants to solve, to crack, to be the one who finally understands, who gets access to the hidden room. That desire doesn't come from romance, it comes from pattern recognition, from the brain hating loose ends. Predictability kills intrigue because it removes the need to invest attention. Once the outcome feels known, energy reallocates elsewhere. Phones, work, old habits, comfort. Uncertainty keeps energy locked in place. It's exhausting and compelling. There's an evolutionary angle that gets simplified too often. It's not about dominance or mystery for its own sake. It's about emotional regulation, the ability to remain internally stable when outcomes are unclear. That stability used to mean survival. Today it reads as confidence, or composure, or depth, even when it's just calm. Calm men don't rush. They don't mirror excitement to prove connection. They don't escalate emotions to secure attachment. They let things unfold at their own speed. That slowness frustrates, and frustration in small doses binds attention tighter than pleasure. There's a scene that plays out quietly in kitchens and cars and half-lit hallways. Someone is talking, sharing, testing emotional waters. The hard-to-read man listens, nods, asks one question that actually fits, then stops. No immediate countershare, no matching vulnerability. The silence after feels heavier than expected, not awkward, weighted. It gets filled later, in thought, in replay, in imaginary conversations that never happened. That's the investment. The dangerous belief is that this kind of attraction is earned by doing something special, saying the right thing, unlocking the man. Sometimes nothing is being unlocked. Sometimes that's just how he is. Contained, focused, not broadcasting his internal weather every hour. There's a line that gets crossed when someone starts performing mystery. That's different. That smells like effort, like strategy, like waiting too hard. Real unreadability doesn't need maintenance. It's not fragile. It doesn't collapse when questioned. If pressed, it stays calm, answers plainly, without overcorrecting. That calm under scrutiny signals self-trust. Self-trust is contagious. It makes others doubt themselves instead. There's an old memory. Nothing symbolic. Just a man sitting in a waiting room flipping the same page back and forth. Not reading, just holding the magazine. Someone across from him kept glancing up, then away, then back again. Nothing happened. But the attention never left. That's what this is. The mind keeps checking in when it can't categorize. Eventually a name gets whispered internally, not spoken out loud. It comes late, after enough loops. Control, not control over others, over self, over reaction. over the urge to spill everything just to feel closer. That control reads as depth, as groundedness, as something earned the hard way, even when it wasn't. Here's the boring but true line. Some men are just quiet, and quiet gets misinterpreted as powerful because so much noise is fake. There's a cost to being hard to read. It doesn't get talked about much. The same containment that creates attraction also creates distance, misunderstanding, loneliness that doesn't announce itself. People project fantasies, then get disappointed when the man doesn't match the story they wrote in their head. That disappointment can turn sharp. He never promised anything, but expectations formed anyway. That's the risk. There's a moment where someone realizes they've been chasing a question, not a person. That realization stings. It feels like wasted energy, or embarrassment, or both. Sometimes it turns into anger, sometimes into silence. Hard-to-read men don't always get the credit for what they offer. They get assigned meanings instead, and those meanings change without warning. One day he's intriguing, the next he's distant. The behavior didn't change, the story did. There's a strange comfort in predictability. It's not sexy, but it's warm, like the same mug every morning, the same route, the same song low in the background. Hard-to-read men disrupt that comfort. Not loudly, just enough to keep the nervous system awake. Awake feels like alive. Alive feels like attraction, even when nothing is actually happening. There's a small shame that comes later, realizing how much mental space got rented out for free, how many imaginary conversations happened, how many signals were manufactured. That shame is quiet. It shows up during routine tasks, folding laundry, waiting for downloads, sitting through meetings that could have been emails. The realization slips in sideways. Maybe it wasn't that deep. Maybe it was. The ambiguity doesn't resolve, and that's the point. Men who are hard to read don't chase attention, not because they're above it, just because their sense of self doesn't depend on being decoded quickly. They move through interactions without trying to optimize reactions. They don't sharpen themselves into a message. They stay human. That humanity, unpolished, incomplete, controlled but not cold, becomes the question that doesn't close. The question lingers, gets revisited at night, in the shower, in the car with the radio off. It doesn't need an answer. It just needs to stay open. And it usually does, even when nothing is wrong, even when the room is warm, even when the phone stays face down. Anyway, that's how it seems from the outside. Could be wrong, probably is. But the pattern keeps repeating, and the cost keeps showing up later, in ways no one really claims, in ways that feel familiar. We notice it, then go back to whatever we were doing, unfinished.